This completes the presentation by the second state, which is Osun State. While we await the Secretariat to schedule the next state for presentation, we'll continue to look at the reports and to record on the ECADA. So we're waiting for the next state to present. The Secretariat will advise us as soon as that state is ready. Thank you.
So there you see the difference between the APC and the PDP. The 347,634 to APC to PDP is 337,377. This is really close compared to the previous one, and the difference are 10,257. Then the rejected votes there is 172,000. Well, clearly, this is one that we've got a lot of people looking, trying to read between the lines here and look at all of these figures that have really gone. This is very close. Yeah, and added to the fact that on the one hand you have the number of registered voters to be 1.67 million, yeah. But number of accredited voters, I've been concerned about the number of registered voters, Mr. Guabo. Compared to the number of accredited voters, those who actually came out to be accredited to vote.
Yeah, it's either of two things. It's either that registration wasn't tidy, in which case there were gross abuses in the process of having people to register to vote. That's why you can have such a high number. And then those who have come out for accreditation is almost 50%. That's curious, because if, as we have noticed nationwide, there was some kind of enthusiasm for this particular election to participate, to partake, I can understand people not being able to collect their PVCs, but I can't understand why you have a PVC and yet we refuse to show.
Could it be voter fatigue? Don't forget, they just ran the governorship elections in Osun State.
Absolutely. So it should even be higher there. You know, it's quite. There are questions to ask. There are questions.
Prof, do you share the same view?
Not particularly, except that bearing in mind the last experience in Osun State, where INEC nearly got its fingers burnt, I think INEC will have left nothing to chance with respect to these elections. Except the contrary is proven, I think we have to give INEC the benefit of the doubt. That's my own view.
So in looking at these figures now, these are two states in the southwest that have been released, Osun and Ekiti State. And looking at the figures, one will easily come to the realization that the APC candidate has indeed won in these two places. But what does that mean for the southwest of the country? Because in the southwest, 6 states, 2 already going to the incumbent. What do you make of it, Mr. Guabo?
Well, it's almost consistent with what transpired in 2015. The southwest states went to the incumbent president in 2015. I would rather say that the closeness of results in these 2 states so far indicate that the president has lost a little ground and the PDP has gained a little ground.
And what was that?
Look at Osun State, for instance, 347, 634 to 300 for APC and 337, 377 for the PDP. In 2015, PDP couldn't garner this kind of results. They couldn't get this much of votes. And the APC obviously got more votes than this. So that's why I'm saying somebody has lost a little.
So are you looking at this in context of the possible outcome of the overall results?
I'm saying this in particular reference to these two states declared so far.
But one of the things that some other people have said in the scope of all of this awareness about this election is that some months, a significant number of months before the general elections, it seemed like APC had no opposition, so to speak. It seemed as if the PDP kind of rapidly, gathered itself together and organized.
Yeah, that's in sync with what I just said.
Okay.
That in 2015, the scenarios are different, though, because it was President Buhari from the north against Goodluck Jonathan from the south. And so today, that has changed. We have two contestants from the north, both of them of the same...
Very similar
political tendencies. And so, if you ask me to give a judgment on these two states declared, the PDP has lesser votes, but has gained more grounds in both states.
Okay, Prof, what do you say?
That's paradoxical.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Yes.
Because the results from Ekiti, for instance, are not unexpected. Kayode Fayemi has just been brought back into reckoning, and he was minister under Buhari, and he has tremendous appeal and influence, especially among the young voters, okay, because of what he promises. So I'm not surprised at because he actually will be considered to be the animal or the elephant in the room. So he delivered. But as far as Osun State is concerned, it's not that clear, because I think the APC ran into rough terrain in terms of what happened in Osun. So it's a surprise of sorts to find the APC clutching victory by a hair's breadth. So, but I'm not so surprised generally. The Southwest used to be, or was considered as, a bastion of support for the APC. But the undoing of the APC has been the refusal of its candidate to acknowledge the necessity for restructuring. And some people thought the APC was going to lose votes for not endorsing directly restructuring.
Okay.
All right, so we understand that they're going to reconvene by 2:30. Yeah, so I guess we'll just have to move on to that. So, yes.
What is safe to say for these two states declared is that, yes, President Buhari has scored more votes, but Buhari, the challenger, has made 25%.
The challenger? The PDP challenger?
The PDP challenger has made 25%
in both states. That's in the context of perhaps if you're looking at the
of satisfying the provisions.
Okay, but gentlemen, I mean, is this a typology of what to come? Because this looks a little, their scenarios are different, just as Prof highlighted. They've just done the governorship elections in these states. these two states. So they're warmed up for this. But unlike some other states in the Southwest, for instance, even across the country, who have not conducted the governorship elections, which is coming up in about 2 weeks.
Or your state, for instance, Ogun State also.
So, is this, what do we expect? Is it likely going to be different, or will this particular one perhaps rub off on those other Southwest states?
Well, I won't want to say rub off, because the election was conducted at the same time. No state was privy to the results in other states. But you know, the APC is in hot water in certain parts of the Southwest, notably Ogun State, to some extent Lagos State. So we might be in for some surprises, depending on the level of sophistication of the electorate. You know, the Yoruba wants to see themselves as the most politically sophisticated electorate in Nigeria. I wait what happens in the rest of the Southwest, because a place like Ondo State is not as clear-cut as we understand. I mentioned Lagos State, I mentioned Ogun State. I don't know what you want to say about next door to Ondo State, Edo State, and all those places. So this could be a very interesting tussle.
They have some interesting results in those neighboring, those states you mentioned. But when you say what to expect and the kind of surprises, will that be in context of the 25% Mr. Guabo talked about, or in terms of outright victory?
Well, both. I don't see any state in the Southwest where it's a two-horse race, let's admit, in the Southwest. And so most of those states that we are talking about, the contestants will get their minimum 25%, I suspect. That's my hunch. But in terms of majority vote, I think the jury is still out on that.
What about the other political parties? Remember, they made a meal about their candidature.
No, I've said it here before, that those parties are essentially plastic parties. They are synthetic. They are not organic parties. They are also run, as we will put it, say, in America. They just ran, but they themselves did not expect that they will be on the front line.
Is that structurally speaking?
No, we're just saying a statement of fact. Evidentially, my friend says, but a statement of fact, political reality.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So because as it stands now, we're expecting that after these elections, INEC is waiting on the line to register about 105 political parties in addition to the 91 that we already have. So if you say this is a statement of facts, where then does the fate of this 105 lie?
No, I think it would be foolhardy for INEC to increase the number of parties. As we have it now, you have 91 parties, very unwieldy, cumbersome, and almost chaotic. We were at the butt of jokes across the world. 91 parties, you want to increase to 200 and something parties? I've said jokingly on this program too, that that will amount to carrying a good joke too far. I think, on the contrary, INEC should now apply the brakes and whittle down the number of parties depending on their performance.
Does the law give them the power to say they won't register any?
No, it's not a question of registering. Deregistering is what you'll be talking about. Parties that have failed to perform, that are comical in terms of their performance, they should be asked to be retired and take a rest, awaiting maybe a rerun in the future, where they might stake a claim for political office. But as things are now, Nigeria will be better off with fewer number of parties. I don't know where Gimba got the number that is banding.
Well, it's actually one of our guests that banded that question as well. But Mr. Igwabo, this you nodding and
No,
smiling.
I'm in total agreement with him. The truth of the matter is, people will take us very seriously if we take ourselves seriously. 91 political parties, 73 presidential candidates, some of them didn't even score as much votes as were cancelled, as were invalidated. What does that tell you? If we want to be taken seriously, then we take ourselves seriously. The point is, there was this Supreme Court judgment at the time that appeared reasonable. It's clear to everybody now. That's when Ganifa Wahimi went to court, that it is not a reasonable judgment. Otherwise, in no time, we will have 1,000 political parties.
But it's still the law.
That's what I'm saying. These things really, really need to be reviewed, or they can come by way of amendments.
Yeah, but isn't there a check and balance? If they say you have to meet certain criteria, or else you'll be deregistered. Doesn't that balance
Yes,
itself
I
out?
thought it was there. If you didn't have a certain number of members in the national or state assemblies, then you were automatically deregistered.
If you didn't win any seat into the...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think somebody went to court and got judgment over that particular provision. The whole thing is hazy. We should look at that particular section of the provisions of that section of the electoral law and quickly do something.
What would you rather have?
I would say let's have 2 political parties based on the results we are getting now, and put in the electoral law a provision for independent candidacy.
But one of the issues that's also been raised, if we're saying go with what we have now and from that come up with political parties, 2 political parties from your suggestion, one of the issues being raised is that of ideology versus interests.
Not really. See, for me, political stability is what we are aiming for. And even though it was a military contraption, the NROC and the SDP, at the governorship elections, the difference between the 2 parties was just 2 states. One had 16 governors, another had 14. It was a remarkable show of a stabilized polity. And in the National Assembly, it was basically the same thing. So having...
Well, the interesting thing about that National Assembly election of that particular, this thing was that the NRC was already in control of that National Assembly.
Yes.
And
but the SDP won the presidency.
Was going to win the presidency.
That's the novel. If we had continued that way, by now, I'm sure we won't be EC1, EC2, EC8 will not be relevant. That is the truth. I mean, political parties are scoring 5 votes, and they are running for the... How do we even know that they have any presence in some of these states? It doesn't make any sense. It's becoming a huge joke. As Prof said, registering more parties will be taking a good joke too far. And I agree with him entirely.
What do you think should be done in situations where, for instance, a party gets 51% of the total votes count at the end of the day, and the other one gets 49? It seems to be the norm now that the winner takes all. What do you think can be done about that?
So far, the 2 results we have show healthy rivalry. It doesn't, you can tell from these results that there have been no pardons, there have been no, I can tell that
I like it that you put it that way. That you can tell.
The results, votes have not been allocated, as would usually happen in many states, that one party will score 1.9 million votes, another party will barely score 200,000 votes. It's preposterous.
Now, are we reading out the possibility of the courts or tribunals getting busy this time, or perhaps it will be a lot less?
If this trend continues, there will be very little for the tribunals to do, I confess.
But would that be good business for lawyers, Prof?
Well, lawyers are on call for any aggrieved or dissatisfied litigant because the lawyers have the right to speak where others cannot really exercise that right. But quite sincerely, Mr. Goebo's point is well taken in terms of political engineering. We can't look at the past and exalt the past as if everything was hunky-dory. Now, we have to make progress. And it's quite evident from the results of 2 states that we're ending up with something similar to the Babangida formula. One a little to the left, and the other a little to the right. Now you can see, generally speaking, that the new parties have their job cut out for them. They lack the muscle, the financial and organization wherewithal to really stand up and stake a claim for governance. That is what we are seeing now. The young shall grow, or they have grown, but they are still growing. They really can't provide sufficient competition to the established parties. The established parties themselves are in a process of evolution. That's why you see politicians crisscrossing the parties. You belong to one party in the morning, in the afternoon, you switch sides.
Which is what's making people question the difference between the two.
No, I've said on this program too that the parties are the same poison. Only the labels of the bottles are different. But then that will, with time, clear-cut distinctions will evolve. Ideologically, it's beginning to evolve now, especially with regards to the NNPC. The NNPC is the cash cow of Nigeria. And if you want to sell it off to your friends and cronies, I know the Labour has said they will resist. So that's making our politics ideological. It's going to be more interesting, okay, if people now vote for those who want to unbundle, that's the language we now use, unbundle the NNPC, and others who believe that unbundling the NNPC is selling the heirlooms and the family jewels. So ideology is so exciting.
But how do you see that playing out, Prof? If you have 2 key parties just coming up and saying, look, this is what we believe in, this is what we will stick by, how do you see the citizens just keying into some of these things?
No, that will heighten the ideological consciousness of the citizenry. And that's what we've been yearning for, that we should not vote for candidates on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion. The 4th lines of Nigeria, we want to de-emphasize. When you are ideological, you go ideological, then the chances are you aggregate votes along those lines instead of primordial sentiments. This guy is from my area, and there are so many in Nigeria who can reason out of that mold. They just look at his face, this is
my brother.
Now my brother, or it's religious bigotry. We don't need that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where the president comes from, even his religion. So long as he can draw the lines between those predilections and national interest.
I'll come back to this and follow that up, just in a bit. But let's see, even though we didn't